What is going on, everybody? Welcome to Zach Bracketology. If this is your first time watching, it probably is because I've only posted one other video. Basically on this channel, though, what I'm going to do is every single Thursday when the new Bracketology comes out, I'm going to predict if those games are real. And once Bracketology comes around, once the actual bracket is revealed, I will obviously do a prediction with that as well. So this week I'm going to be previewing, or today I'm going to be previewing the new AP Top 25. This released last night. As you can see, it is Tuesday, February 20th. Starting at the bottom of the list, we got number 25, BYU, coming in at 18-7. They got a game against Baylor tonight. It's a home game. They dropped 6 from the last week. As a Big 12 fan, as an Iowa State fan, this team really surprises me and really confuses me at times as well because, BYU put up 87 points against Iowa State, but then they struggled immensely against Houston shooting the ball. So I really think that BYU, if their shooting can be on, they seriously could be a top team in the Big 12, but I think they're sitting at like 6-6 in the conference right now. This will be a really interesting game tonight against Baylor, and I also believe that they play K-State at K-State, which will also be another very interesting game as well. So I look for BYU to go. I honestly wouldn't be surprised if they go 0-2 this week. I'm not going to lie. It'll be interesting to see where they fall, though. Florida's next at 24 on the list. They play at Alabama, and then I believe they also will play Vanderbilt home, so they should at least go 1-1. This is going to be a really good test, though, for Florida tomorrow. Florida's the biggest jumper, I believe, on this list, coming in at 11. You see a 10 right here. But number 11, they jumped up 11 spots. So last week they were 35. I believe last week they were a 7 seed. So I think this would make them a 5 or 6 seed in the tournament now. But Florida's an interesting team. Definitely keep an eye on them. Coming in at 23, we have Texas Tech at 18-7. This one kind of surprised me a little bit because they lost to Iowa State. But they also did 30-piece Kansas, but that was also without Kevin McCullough. Kansas does not have a lot of depth. We've heard people say that all year long. It'll be a very interesting game to watch tonight versus TCU. TCU is kind of an up-and-down team, it seems like, this year. They can pop off, but they can also, maybe not play the best. Next on the list at 22, we have Colorado State at 20-6. Looks like tomorrow they will play at New Mexico, which will be a very interesting game because New Mexico's, they're probably getting some conversation. Actually, let's look and see if they're on here. Are they? Yes, they are. New Mexico's right here. I bet if New Mexico wins, that they'll probably be ranked next week. Colorado State moving up 5. They weren't ranked last week, it looks like. This is a team that I can say that I have not paid attention to a ton, but they have been hanging out in the rankings, I think, most of the year. They could make a Cinderella run in the tournament. Coming in at 21, Washington State up 9, which is very impressive. At Arizona, this will be a very, very interesting game. Really test Washington State, but Washington State is a very hot team right now. I had a comment in the last video that I made talking about how Washington State's one of the teams that nobody wants to play right now, and I can believe that. Washington State is a very hot team right now. I look for them to give Arizona a run for their money. This will be a very interesting game on Thursday. Number 20 is South Carolina at 21-5. You see they dropped down 9. They'll play at Ole Miss on Saturday, so it looks like they get the rest of the week off. South Carolina has had a very interesting year so far. I think they've dropped, I want to say they've dropped the last 2 or 3 games in the conference, or maybe it was just one, but they did have some very impressive wins early on, and actually very recently as well. I know they took down Tennessee. This will be an interesting matchup, though, at Ole Miss. Ole Miss probably most likely has the upper hand on South Carolina, I would imagine. But yeah, South Carolina lost to LSU and Auburn. The last win was on the 10th, a 15-point win against Vanderbilt. South Carolina did already beat Ole Miss, though, it looks like, 68-65, but this is also on Ole Miss's home floor, so that'll be a very interesting game. San Diego State moving back up into the rankings at 20-6. They'll play at Utah State. This looks like this is going to be a great week for college basketball. This is actually tonight. They'll play at Utah State, a Utah State team who is gotten themselves into the conversation of possibly being in the tournament. I think Utah State is 21-5. Looks like Utah State is 3-point favorites in this game. San Diego State, another one of those teams that kind of confuses me a little bit. I don't think they're as solid as last year. But I mean, if they're going to be ranked, they should definitely be towards the bottom. So I guess that's not a horrible prediction for them. St. Mary's did not move. It looks like 18th. They'll play San Francisco tonight. It looks like. I watched their game against Pepperdine. I think it was last Saturday. Seems like St. Mary's has always got kind of a hot team. I don't know if they can make a run in March, but it'll be interesting to see. Kentucky coming in at 17, 18-7. I know that they took down Auburn on Saturday. Very impressive win from them. They led most of the game. That was honestly probably one of the best college basketball games that I've seen this year. Kentucky's got a few things to figure out still, it looks like. I mean, their defense definitely looked a lot better against Auburn on Saturday, but it'll be interesting to see where they finish in the SEC. And they will play at LSU on Wednesday. I imagine Kentucky can probably squeak by LSU in that one. Dayton coming in at 16, did not move from last week, 21-4. They'll play at George Mason. Not a whole lot to say there. Dayton seems like they're always kind of hanging around the rankings or, somewhat decent of a team. And right now, they're at a 16 in the country, so very impressive for them. Number 15 is Creighton at 19-7. Looks like they moved up 2. They'll play a huge game at home versus UConn. This is another really, really tough game. This is tonight at 8:30. I really do not see Creighton beating UConn. UConn looks like a better team than they did last year when they won the whole tournament. So I look for UConn to beating Creighton. That's a interesting spot though for Creighton. I would probably have them a little bit lower. I probably wouldn't have moved them from last week. Auburn 20-6. I just talked about them with the game against Kentucky. They dropped down just 1 and they'll play at Georgia. Auburn, they've got a lot of depth. They really do have a lot of depth, probably the best depth in college basketball. Big depth for Auburn. They're a fun team to watch. I mean, when they're on, they're definitely on. This will be an interesting finish to their season, see where they end up with seeding. Alabama, we talked about already, number 13. They'll play Florida this Saturday, or tomorrow, excuse me. That'll be a good challenge. I think Alabama, is right around where they want to be. I think 13, the 10 through 15 slot is a good area for Alabama to be right now. Illinois at number 12, 19-6. Looks like they play at Penn State tomorrow. Should get an easy win there. Illinois, they're another team that I haven't really paid attention to a ton this year. I've watched maybe like 1 or 2 of their games. But again, they're definitely good to be right around this area. Baylor coming in at 19-6, another Big 12 team. As we talked about tonight, they'll play at BYU. Baylor's got a very interesting week ahead of them because they're at BYU tonight and then home against Houston on Saturday. If they could somehow go 2-0, I could see Baylor moving all the way up right around in here, the 7-8 area, depending on how some of these teams do as well, of course. But they're also another interesting team. Definitely could make a tournament run. Coming in at the top 10, right at the number 10 on the list, North Carolina at 20-6. As you see, they dropped 3. They'll play at Virginia. This will be an interesting game. Virginia got blown out yesterday by Virginia Tech. I think Virginia only scored like 41 or 42, 43 points or something like that. So that'll be interesting to see how North Carolina does against the Virginia defense. But Virginia is also not a very offensive team at all by any means. So it'll be interesting to see if North Carolina can get going right away. Can Virginia slow them down? How does that really turn out? I pick North Carolina to win that one big. They'll probably move right back up to about 2 or 3 more spots. Kansas, 20-6, number 9. They play Saturday against Texas. This is a game where I feel like it could be a trap game. However, it is at home. I didn't see that. I thought this said away at Texas. Kansas should win that game. I know Kevin McCullough is back as well, so Kansas should hang on to Texas. Kansas is another team, though, where it's like you feel like they could just all of a sudden be out of the rankings and not even be in the conversation for the Big 12. Being a Big 12 team, this is probably the most disappointing season Kansas has had in a while, and they're still 20-6. Like, that's still, I mean, look at Iowa State's 20-6, Duke's 20-5, Marquette Knight. Like, they're still good, but it's just not as good as we maybe thought. That's probably a lot of because of their depth issues. Number 8 is Duke at 20-5. They moved up one spot. They'll play at Miami. Miami sucks this year, so Duke should easily get by Miami tomorrow. Duke this weekend will play Wake Forest, a rematch, where Duke won on their home court by 8, but now it's at Wake Forest. So that'll be a very interesting matchup to watch. I think if Duke goes 1-1, they might drop down one, they might stay the same. That's really hard to tell sometimes. Marquette, 19-6, we saw that pounding against UConn. They got beat by, I think it was 82-51 or something like that, but they'll play an easier opponent in DePaul tomorrow. Try to regroup themselves. I like this ranking for Marquette. I would have put them a little bit lower, maybe in this area right here with the 9 and 10, maybe even 11. They're a solid team, though. I know they were coming for that 1 seed last week when they played UConn, but UConn's just way too overpowered. Coming in at number 6, this is my team, Iowa State. They moved up to 4 from last week. Last night, really good game against Houston, the number 2 team in the nation. I'm trying not to be biased, but when I seriously look at Iowa State, this is the best Iowa State team that they've had in a very long time. This team could be very dangerous in March. When you guys look at like the trapezoid teams, Iowa State's at like the top of that list, and trapezoid teams have won the tournament the last, I think, 5 out of 6 years or something like that. So I'm trying not to be biased, but Iowa State, they lost to Houston, but by 8. I think as long as they get a dominating performance against West Virginia, which they should, Iowa State will probably still linger in this 6, 7, 8 column. I don't see them going up at all. But yeah. Number 5 is Tennessee at 19-6. This is another team that kind of confuses me a little bit. I think they can be really, really good at times, but also, we saw they got beat by like 20 or 15 to Texas A&M 2 weeks ago. They do put up high numbers, though, a lot. Their last 5 games, they've had 88, 92, 85, 88, and 103. Or excuse me, no. 88, 92, 69, 88, and 103. The 69 was against Texas A&M. Interesting to see how they finish up in the SEC. Let me take a look at their remaining. They do get a rematch against Texas A&M. It looks like they also play home against Auburn. That'll be a fun game to watch. They'll play at Alabama. That'll be a very interesting game at South Carolina. They got a really tough remaining schedule. The way that this looks, they could seriously fall off very easily. I would not be surprised. Number 4, Arizona, 20-5. They'll play versus Washington State. We kind of talked about this game a little bit. Once we get up to these top teams, it's not a whole lot to say because, they're up there for a reason. I do think Arizona, though, is going to have a tough game with Washington State. Arizona's probably going to hold on and win. But that'll be a good matchup here on Thursday. Purdue, we saw them lose to Ohio State. Purdue is another team. I'm sorry, Purdue fans, if you're watching, but Purdue is another team that I don't think that they have it this year again. Zach Edey is obviously a very dominant player, but it almost just seems like he's kind of just like, the one that's like keeping the team together, whatever. I will honestly, they'll most likely be the 1 seed. But it will be very interesting to see how they do once tournament time comes around. Houston, number 2, 23-3. They just beat Iowa State, like I said, by 8 points. They were 9-point favorites in that game, I believe. But they'll play at Baylor. This will be a very, very interesting game. At Baylor, Baylor's number 11 right now, as we talked about earlier. So I really have a tough time believing that Houston could get by Baylor on Baylor's home court. If this is at Houston, I would 100% take Houston by like 10. No question about it. But I just don't think Houston's going to be able to win at Baylor. That'll be a very interesting game to watch. And the last ranking, number 1 is UConn. UConn seems like their team is even better than last year. It'll be really interesting to see how deep they can go in March, who their matchups are going to be against. But tonight they'll play at Creighton, a big test for them as well. But yeah, that's the preview of the top 25 teams. I'll be back on Thursday with another bracketology video. If you like this, make sure to give it a big thumbs up, and that's all. I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace.